Hey there, welcome to the HerBusiness Podcast. I'm your host, Suzi Dafnis. I'm also the CEO at HerBusiness. And if there's one thing I know about women business owners, it's that we work hard. Now, building a business, growing a business, it takes a little bit of hard work. But getting stuck in that role of doer can actually start to work against us after a little bit of time. As your business grows, it can actually hold you back. When you decide that everything should go through you, or almost everything, when you become the bottleneck in your business, that can cap your growth no matter how hard of a worker you are and how many hours you put in. Eventually, we do need to let go of some tasks and give the ownership of those tasks to someone else. Now, that can feel very vulnerable, and like any new territory, once we finally let go, so much opens up. You finally have space to think. You have space to breathe, make big decisions, work on the business. You get to be the CEO, the person who leads, rather than being stuck in the details. But how do you actually make that transition? Because it sounds really good. How do you decide when it's time to pass a task on to someone else or to hire someone? How do you decide which tasks you should keep and which ones to delegate? And most importantly, how do you actually build up the trust in another person that they can actually do something as well as you, if not better? Now, to answer those questions, I'm joined today by the amazing Kristy Smith, who's the CEO and founder of Virtual Elves. She's also our 2026 HerBusiness Member of the Year, and HerBusiness specializes in connecting business owners like you with skilled virtual assistants so that you can finally focus on growth instead of grinding through daily tasks. Now, this year, Kristy put herself to the test. She decided that she would actually outsource her most important piece of work, the work that she had on her plate, but that she needed to give up in order to step more into the CEO role so she could finally get the space that she helps so many other business owners get. And in today's episode, she's sharing what drew her towards that decision, how she learned to let go of tasks, how she trained and nurtured an incredible team, and what she discovered about herself once she finally stepped into the role of leader rather than doer. I'm so excited to have her tell her story here on the podcast and share with you how you can also step into the leadership that you're meant for as the owner of your business. Let's welcome Kristy to the show. Hey, Kristy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Suzi. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited for this conversation because you've been doing some things that I think really modeling leadership really well and looking at getting yourself out of the day-to-day in the business and stepping more into your role as the founder and the owner. And that's where I want to start, because earlier this year, I know that you had an intention, could have even been the end of last year, an intention to get away from some of the doing and start to hand some things over. Now, I want to ask what prompted that decision and how did you know it was time to step back a little?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? Because I don't know that I really did know that it was time. I think I just took a leap of faith and realized that if I didn't make this step, the last piece of me being in the doing was me doing the discovery calls. So brand new leads that come into the business, I always thought that I needed to be the first person that people spoke to because I was the business owner and only I could sell my business the way that I wanted to sell it. But I quickly realized that that just purely being in that space was stopping me from actually leading my team, being more of a visionary and stepping more into the CEO that I needed to be if the business was going to continue to grow. So I made a conscious decision in November of last year that I needed to get somebody and just trust that someone could tackle that role the same way that I did if I gave them the right instructions and if I trained them and if I brought on the right person. So yeah, in January, I let go and I found the most incredible young man who is warm and kind and all the things that I know that I wanted people to feel when they first spoke to someone in the business. And yeah, 6 months down the track, it's just incredible.
I love that. And you said three key things. Now, let me see if I can remember them. First is you brought in the right person. So you've brought someone in who has the qualities of the person that you want interacting with your clients. You were giving them instructions and there was another thing you said. Was
Just having
it
the faith to let go.
having the faith to let go, but also training them?
Yes.
And I think that sometimes we can bring someone into the business. Having the faith to let go is the first thing, but then we don't do the training. We don't show them this is the way it's done here. And this is a conversation I was having with some leaders yesterday, that we all have a set of this is the way we do it here. And even if people come in with great experience, I think it's important for us to introduce them to the way that we do things.
Yeah.
And so I love that 6 months down the line, you're in a really good place. What had you know that he, in your instance, was ready to fully own that role? Like, was there some indicators in the last 6 months that had you feel confident?
Yeah, there definitely was. And it wasn't the fact that he got straight into the role and I could hand it all over at once. It was a very staged handover. And so, that you talk about training, well, that thinking about an onboarding process, I think, is super important. I mean, we talk about that a lot in my business, but when you're bringing somebody new into the business, not only is it important that you show them the tasks that they need to do, but you give them the time to feel comfortable enough before you move them to the next spot. So the thing that worked for me was just constantly, every single day, having an end of day meeting with Jake to say, how did you feel about today? What were the things that weren't comfortable? What were the things that you think don't work for you in the process? And through that process, over probably took him about 4 months to feel totally comfortable that he could completely walk away without me having any input at all, which I think is pretty good. And
I think
and he felt the ownership because I allowed him to come back to me with feedback on whether or not how I used to do it works for him as well.
And what I
So
love
it's a
is
tool.
those regular check-ins, because I don't feel we do enough of that. I feel like we think, well, they're adults, they can read instructions, I've got an SOP for that. But having that regular, well, how did it go today? What worked?
Yeah.
I don't know what your exact process was, but I know for me that onboarding that's worked the best is when the touch points, especially in the early weeks, were very frequent, like every day for a couple of weeks, and then maybe every second day. And we've never stopped in some ways, but so often I see people just expect people to know what they're doing and not have that really quick feedback. Because if someone's been doing something incorrectly, if you like, for 2 days, and we make that correction, that's different to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month down the line, correcting them, just for their
That's it.
confidence or your progress, so many things.
Yeah.
So that was a key role that you knew you needed to move on to step more and more into the CEO role. How do you decide what stays with you and what belongs to someone else?
That was the hardest part because for 16 years, I was the key role in the operational part of the business. And the doing, and just knowing that every single day something was in my schedule to keep me busy, to keep me, this whole idea of keeping busy makes you feel like you're achieving something. And then all of a sudden, you hand it over to somebody, and over time, with confidence, they keep taking the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. And then all of a sudden, you don't have that role anymore.
Mm.
I was lost. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. I would come into work every single day and, be contacting Jake and saying, "Is there anyone that I need, you want me to speak to today? Is there any?" Because I was just, I I honestly felt like, I'd actually lost a piece of me because that connection with the client was
Mm.
the one thing that really lit me up. So again, how did I decide what to keep and not to keep? I knew that I had to give him that entire role for him to take ownership of it. But what was really great through our conversations, and I know that we're going to talk about my quarterly meetings as part of leadership, through those conversations, it was him that actually said to me, "Hey, Kristy, I was just thinking, if you still wanted to keep the connection with clients, what about if you did the client testimonial interviews and reconnected with them after 3 months. So
That's great.
I brought something back in that gave me that connection, but I didn't take back on the day-to-day part of the role. I was able to give that
Mm.
fully, and I think, it's not whether I decide whether I hold on to things necessarily. It's I think my team decide whether they're ready to take it from me, to be honest. I and it's letting go. We've talked about letting go. You've got to be comfortable, and the only way you can be comfortable is by giving them the confidence by giving it to them.
And
You can't give them
arming
the
them with
confidence by
the
holding on
things
to
that
it.
can help them succeed, like the
Yeah,
training, like the information, like the ability to check in every
yeah,
day, and until they can fully own it. Because it's one thing
yeah.
to delegate, and it's another thing to have someone fully own something. And I
Mm.
love how, you resisted the going back, jumping in, fixing things. Um,
Yeah,
and I love that he could see a piece that is really ideal for you to get all the
yeah,
love 3 months later,
yeah,
and also, any critiques and whatever at that point.
yeah.
But again, you mentioned something, and that I wrote a little article about this just the other day, that grief, which is kind of sounds like a heavy word, but when you go from being indispensable in your business to coming into the office every day and going, um, I feel like a little
Netflix.
and, grieving the connection that you had. And
Yeah,
so, if we're not aware that those emotional things happen in our business, we can throw
mm,
ourselves back into, well, I'll just go in and fix it, and I'll just take on a few calls, and he's probably got too much on, or whatever it is, and put
yeah,
yourself right in the way of disempowering that person. Whereas if you
yes,
can say, oh, I feel a little lost. I kind of miss the connection. I wonder how else I could be connected. And then
yeah.
this opportunity comes out. I think that a lot of women say they want to delegate more and more, but what they're struggling with is exactly what we're talking. It's the actual letting go. Was there anything you had to shift in yourself before you could truly hand over the role?
Yeah, I definitely think that thought of no one else can do it the way that I can do it,
Mm,
is probably the biggest one. And to get myself out of that, I had to prove to myself that someone else could do it, because
mm,
and the only way to do that is by documenting. And so we went through an ISO 9001 accreditation last year, and then again this year, which is a big milestone for us. But during that process, we had to create workflows from start to finish, build a process for every single part of that workflow, and document those within
mm.
a quality management system. So because of that, I could see quite clearly exactly where I could let go of those things and how I could stage it to actually hand that over, so it wasn't so scary. I think we make it really scary letting go of things, and I think we, as women, we tend to do a lot and think we can do it all ourselves. It's easier for us to just get in and do it. It would take me, you know, 2
Mm.
hours to show someone else how to do it and 10 minutes to do it myself. But what we don't realize is you do that every day, and that's a lot of hours out of your day,
With
out of your
multiple
week,
things, right? With
and
multiple
multiple
things.
things. Yeah,
Mm,
that's right. So I think the process of and I think also thinking long-term plan as well is, do I still want to be doing this and working these
mm.
hours and being in the same place in 5 years' time? Because if I don't change something and if I don't hand over some of these things, that's what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's future planning.
It's a great question to ask. You kind of hinted at this before. Recently, in our members group, you mentioned that you were doing quarterly feedback sessions with your team, and that you said they're just as much about your leadership as they are about their
Mm,
goals in their roles. That is
mm.
quite a vulnerable approach. Tell us a little bit about the process and how you created a culture where people feel safe giving you honest feedback 4 times a year.
Yeah, so this came about actually, It came about through feedback that I had last year from one of my team members when I was doing our regular yearly performance appraisal. And it also came out of me losing somebody last year
Mhm.
and them uncovering some things that they thought about my leadership, which were really in my face, but needed. And so it made me realize that I wasn't spending the same amount of time on leading and, being uh, being an inspiration to the people that I have in my team, the core people that are really going to drive the business, as I had in just working on problems and dealing with projects. So, yeah, so I just decided that I wanted this to not just be a performance management approach. I wanted them to be giving me real feedback on
Mhm.
how I was doing as a leader. What more did they need from me? And some of the questions are very vulnerable, and they're very open in telling me, actually, Kristy, if you would ask me this last month, I would have said this, this, and this. But this month, I feel like you're really conscious about what we're doing and
Mm.
what you're giving us and how you're asking us to do something and the collaboration between us. So, yeah, I feel like the culture, what I've built is empowering my team. The culture of empowerment with my team makes them feel like I trust them in every aspect of the business. I Most of the time, I don't really have to talk to my team other than our once a week management meeting, and that's just really to cover KPIs and performance of the business. And so outside of that, we don't talk that often. And so this
Okay.
is a way to connect with them on a personal level, tell them what I'm working on, tell them, from a leadership perspective, how I can help develop them as well. And so there's a lot of sharing, and I think that that means that they tell me things that they might not if it was in a more formal review.
Mm. And I imagine you have a structure and a process at these meetings. It's not like we're just going to chat.
No, there's questions. There's questions that we answer every single time, and they have to come prepared with the
Mhm.
answers to those questions. And those questions are really the questions really ask them to think deeply about the business, not surface level. And so, they can't just come to me and tell me, "Oh, yeah, that was okay." They've got to actually tell me, one of the questions is, the one um, what is the one big movement you want to make in the next 3 months? So it's encouraging them to think big. It's encouraging them to come up with inspiring ideas and not just wait for me to direct them on ideas. I want them to contribute.
That's great.
Mm,
We meet very regularly with my team. We don't do the quarterly reviews, but we um, meet basically every day. We have a huddle 4 days a week and a team meeting every Wednesday. So as we're
mm,
recording, it's Wednesday. We had our team meeting this morning. So there's no one size fits all, but I think the regular communication and opportunities for people to have conversations that are not about the task they're working on today necessarily,
yeah.
but how they want to develop. And some businesses more than others, there's growth and development for the team organically. We're an educational business, so there's lots
Mm,
of opportunities to learn and grow. Plus, we're adopting new platforms and different technologies, so people are upskilling themselves as a result of the work we do. But otherwise, I think to consciously say, what is the big move that you want to make?
mm,
What is the area that you want to grow in? What is the skill that you want to develop? I think that is empowering them to
yeah.
want to do a better job for you because they're growing themselves.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Mm.
Um, what has your team taught you about leadership that you couldn't have learnt on your own?
Oh, so much. The biggest thing I really had to think about this, it's actually not something almost quantifiable. It's to believe in myself as a leader,
Mhm.
because for the longest time, I've probably been more of the technician in the business, and even though I've had a team for a very long time, 16 years in business, I feel like probably only the last 2 years I'm really stepping in to understand what being a CEO and, the um, uh, what's the visionary of the business, and really just staying there rather than being in the technician space. So they've really taught me that, hey, Kristy, you're doing a great job. You're a great leader. We love working with you. Just keep doing what you're doing because we're okay doing the doing. So that's been really, for me, probably the last 6 months, I've really come to realize that. And that's allowed me to then start thinking bigger and start thinking about how I develop my leadership even beyond that.
Yeah, and having time to work on the business. I know it's kind of a cliche, working in the business but it's a real thing.
Yep.
Unless we start to shed some of these roles that we're carrying because we think no one else can do it, or because we haven't invested in another team member, because it's going to cost us money or whatever it is, the less space we have. Because growth in business, you've been in business 16 years, is different at this stage of business. It's not, yes, we want to grow our revenue and the number of clients, but you also want to grow how much space you have in your life.
Yeah,
How much
that's it.
time
It's
you
not
have
just your
available
life.
to you. Yeah, how much headspace you have. Actually, there's a question. I'm going to pop back very quickly to the quarterly meetings, because there was a question that I totally glossed over that I did want to say. Is there an example of some feedback that you received that really changed the way that you thought about business or a department or something structurally in your business?
Yeah, so probably the biggest feedback I think has come. So I've got 3 very different members in my team. So they're all brilliant in their own space, but all very, very different personalities and behaviors in the way that they work. But that actually works a lot of the time. I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback for me was around making sure that there is a clear pathway for constructive feedback. I mean, it's criticism, feedback, whatever it is, but it's making sure that there is a pathway. And that really helped me develop an operational improvement board in my Monday
Tell us about that.
management system. And what that does is allows me to sit as the leader above that. And when anybody suggests something or thinks that there's a problem with the way that we do something, it goes straight into that board and it becomes a project. And I assign that to the person that I think, or, it could be all 3 of them that are working on it together. But I try to stay out of it as much as possible and get their heads together to solve the
Mm.
problem or to come up with something, because each
Mm.
one of them, when they contribute, brings the most incredible result. And yep, I could step in and go, here's what I want you to do with this, but it doesn't create ownership and it doesn't empower them to actually solve the problem so that it relates to their department. I'm not working
Mm.
in their department on a daily basis to actually know what their challenges are, and if someone was to put a new process in place, how that might affect them. So that's probably the biggest piece, is when someone gave me some feedback and sort of said, I'm kind of not sure where we put this when it happens.
Yeah, and so can anyone nominate an item for improvement?
Yes.
And then you determine who the best people are to work on that improvement? And is it usually an SOP?
Oh, not always. And so an example might be that we've got a feedback mechanism for our clients, and we've had the same feedback mechanism for years and years. And Jake has come in and said, well, actually, I'm working with the clients. It doesn't work. That feedback
Right.
doesn't give me the data that I need. He's a real data nut. That feedback
Mhm.
doesn't give me the data that I actually need. So can we work together to make this so that it's more of a, NPS,
What's
and
an
it's quick and
MPS?
easy. It's a net promoter score. So
Oh, gotcha.
it's a quick and
Mhm.
easy, tap, give me a score between 1 and 10, how we rate in these 3 areas. And so that data, so we're just constantly, and this is part of our quality management accreditation, is that we have to be constantly seeking improvements. So it's that 1% improvement, every week. If we can be doing that, then by the time we get to the end of the year, we've got 100% improvement on so many different things.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I wish I had more questions prepared for you, but I don't.
We could talk forever.
We could talk forever, but I just want to say how I appreciate you bringing this conversation to this show, and because I think everything we've talked about here today is going to be so relevant to anyone who's looking to give herself more leverage, give herself more time, stop, micromanaging, bring improvements and get the team involved in doing that rather than, we need to improve something, therefore I have to come up with a system. You've given us lots of examples where you lean into team in order to make the business better, in order to help them grow, in order to give you more time. And so for that, I want to acknowledge you. And I want to ask you a question that I ask all my guests, and that is, our tagline for this show is your business, your rules. And I'd love to know, what does it mean for you in your business to be doing things by your rules?
We've probably said this before, and I'm sure the answer is the same for so many people. It's freedom. It's freedom of choice, freedom of, the ability to decide whether or not I want to do something and not have to do it because, everyone says that you need to do it. There's so many new, bright, shiny things out there with AI, with, the way that leading, all these things, automations and dehumanizing so many things. I choose not to do that because I know who I am. I know what my business is and I know what I stand for, and it's got to be my way or I'm not going to enjoy it. And what is life without joy in everything you do? Not just the life outside of work. Work has to be joyful too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
No, but if you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can go to the website. I know that will be in the show notes, but just that thank you, Suzi, because HerBusiness has been instrumental really in helping me on the pathway to a lot of the leadership rules that I now live by, and I really look forward to continuing that and growing more.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I want to thank Kristy for not just being on the show today, but for really being an example to so many business owners. It's hard to make that transition from doing it all yourself to trusting others to do it for you. It's even harder to let go of something that you feel is a really, really important role. It takes some vulnerability and it takes a little bit of time. And you heard her talk about training, onboarding, giving that person time to get up to speed. And it also takes courage on the part of the business owner. And Kristy has been able to do it with such grace, as she does so many things. I love that she takes every conversation, every task, every meeting as a chance to not just delegate to her team, but to really learn about who she is as a leader and to discover what feels right for her. That's part of business by your rules, right? Which is our tagline, your business, your rules. You don't have to be a certain type of leader. There is no rule book to follow as a CEO, despite what others might tell you. You get to decide what workflow works best for you, what style of communication clicks with you and your team, how frequently you want to meet with them. And just like Kristy, you get to decide which parts and pieces of your business you put your energy towards and which ones you let go of. Now, Kristy has so many great resources for founders and business owners over on her website, so be sure to check them out. I'm going to put a link to that and other resources, her socials, those sorts of things, over at herbusiness.com/370. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts on today's episode and if it's changed your idea about what leadership can look like in your business. Now, you can leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can send us a direct message. And the best place to do that is on Instagram. You'll find us at HerBusiness on Instagram. And if you'd like to join Kristy and other incredible women business owners who are building their businesses by their rules, join us inside the Growth Network at our founding price of just $37 a month. You get access to monthly growth conversations, access to accountability, training, networking, a community of other women who, like you, are growing and scaling a business. And inside you'll find Kristy and me and a whole lot of fabulous women. And you can join now at herbusinessnetwork.com. We would love to see you inside. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, which I hope you did, we'd love it if you left us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Once again, over on our website at herbusiness.com/370, you'll find a summary of today's episode and links to any other resources we think would be really useful. And if you are new to the show, hi and welcome. Subscribe, click follow, whatever it is, depending where you're listening, and join us for the next episode for more inspiring stories and lessons from successful female entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you listening so much. I'll see you next week, right here on the HerBusiness Podcast. Bye for now.